All right, this week on the show, we are going to be fearlessly questioning needing a recipe with none other than Jay Baer himself. And I pulled this idea from another show Jay was on. I think it was with Wade Harmon, a past guest of the show, where he had talked about the idea of needing a recipe to do things and how he's kind of against it. And it's more of a philosophical thing that he's kind of against. And I thought, oh, this is good. This is interesting because I have a lot of thoughts on it, and I've been trying to keep my thoughts contained and organized on this for a little bit now. And this could go in a couple different directions, but I'm going to try and keep it as concise and on point and on this one direction as possible. But we'll see if I can get everything out of my head and into this thing as I hope I can. But the reason that I wanted to talk about it today, or this week, I should say, is I feel like this is an area where I've made many of mistakes on in the past, and I feel like anytime that I wasn't successful with something, it's because it was my 15-year-old rock and roll rebellious attitude of I don't need to know how anybody did it, and I'm going to do it better my way. And I ultimately didn't learn enough to know where to branch off and kind of steer away from that recipe. This is similar to a conversation that we have yet to have. We kind of prepped it. It was supposed to be the very first episode of this show was, Fiercely Questioning Breaking the Rules with Marcus Sheridan. And there's some similarities here. And I think what it comes down to, and where I'm at on this, and I'm going to get Jay's take on this, and I think we're going to have a pretty interesting conversation. I think you have to know at least what ingredients could be used for that recipe. And when I say could, that's the most important word in that sentence, because it doesn't mean that you have to. It doesn't mean that you should. It doesn't mean that that will always be the way that it was. But you should at least know what somebody else did. And then, from there, it's what you do after you have learned the recipe or have been aware of the recipe. What can you do with that recipe? I mean, we all have access to the exact same things. It's our ability to put them together in a way that is only in our heads, is the absolute true value that we provide. And that's the most important thing that we can do with those recipes. And I think we're just really handicapping ourselves if we don't at least acknowledge that they exist and see what was in there. Now maybe you could say that ignorance is bliss, and I've heard Gary Vaynerchuk kind of preach this gospel quite a bit recently, and the fact that he doesn't read a whole lot of business books. He's not proud of it. He doesn't read a whole lot of books in general, but he kind of keeps to his he kind of keeps to himself, basically, I guess is what he would say. And he doesn't spend time within the industry that he's trying to innovate. He spends time outside of it and to draw ideas from there. And I think that, that is maybe the interesting point of it is, well, what recipe do you want? Are you looking for the recipe for the exact cake that you want to bake? Or are you looking, for a recipe to apply to something entirely different? Are you looking to adapt it to something new? And that, I think, might offer a little more depth in the conversation, as we're always afraid. I actually asked, I believe it was Chris Brogan, this question on like a webinar thing that he did. What does he think about needing a recipe for things? And he said he loves them. He thinks he's great. Now, of course, Chris makes, I would imagine, a decent living off of selling recipes to people, in the fact of he creates online material. And of course, a lot of this, I think, the underlying kind of topic that we're kind of just tippy-toeing around, I guess, is online courses, online products, which is a terrible, disgusting word. I don't know why people call them that, but they call them products and whatever. I think that's what this is the big trend on the internet is create these information products, info products, is the hip slang. Again, it sounds terrible. I don't like it. We can do better. But create these collection of resources, of material, of information that people will pay money for, and it's essentially your recipe. Jay has never bought or took a business class. I don't know if he's ever created an online course of any kind, but it's not part of his business model per se, and that's why I want to kind of get to the bottom of it, because I'm struggling with it myself to figure out what is the true value that you can provide. Because once you get into a one-to-one scenario, it becomes very hard to scale. And obviously, as we can, have been told in previous shows with, Ben Fisher, episode 15, and Trent Deardsmith, episode 7, I believe, you want to create something that can scale and can have the ability to impact a lot more people, because it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to make your life easier. When you're constantly in the middle of it, if you have to be at the middle of it to make it work, well, then it's not necessarily a great business, because it's too dependent upon just you being the sole source of energy for it. That's kind of this philosophical debate that I constantly struggle with. I don't know if you struggle with it, but it's a very interesting thing to take a look at. I think that, again, with all of the information that is available, you're doing yourself at least somewhat of a disservice to not acknowledge the fact that the recipe exists, and to, whether you're going to take a peek at it, just know some of the ingredients or the elements that make up these things to combine and come together in the way that they do. Saying that you're going to completely ignore that might be arrogant of you. I don't know. And that's the fine line. I think there's somewhere in between. Sometimes, you might just need to go at it without ever considering what has been done before. But at the same time, there's no sense in ignoring the information and the progress, that the evolution, I guess, that has gotten us to this point. That's kind of my take on the recipe thing. And I'm a big believer in what I've again, from, I guess, in looking at my own success, I guess, whatever you want to define that as. But starting off, and I've talked about my previous endeavor on the web extensively in these podcast episodes. Looking from that was me not really learning much. I just said, listen, I'm going to do it this way because I think that's how it should be done. And it didn't really work out that well. My second time around, I said, well, I failed. I didn't, what I did didn't work. And I'm going to take, industry best practices, and I'm going to apply them to the limit that I find. And then once I find that limit, then I'm going to go and start creating from there. And that's served me well so far. Is I'm going to emulate before I ultimately create, and to kind of get a feel for the fact that, listen, I don't know everything. Somebody knows more than I do, and I'm not going to dismiss that. But at the same time, know that I have ideas that will ultimately augment and transform the ideas that have come before me. And maybe that's the end of it. Maybe that's the story. Maybe that's where it ultimately goes. I don't know. But those are my thoughts. That's how I've had success in that area. And kind of, I don't know if branching, that might be a strong word, but kind of one thing that I just wanted to rant about, if I may, if you will allow me here for a few minutes to talk about something. And it's very very recent, very current in my mind. If you don't know, for those of you who are unaware, I do have a job at the family agency where I do, sell insurance on a day-to-day. So that's the daily grind. And because of that, I've met a lot of cool people in the insurance space, in the insurance marketing space, which you never thought there might be such a thing, but there is. And I do a show it's the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. It's called The Grow Show with my buddy Jason Cass. I co-host it with him. And it's a lot of fun. I really miss having a co-host. I do enjoy the back and forth of a co-host, because that's where I kind of started. I always had a co-host, whether it was in college radio or the podcast that I did previously. I'm not much of this kind of talking guy. I've had to learn how to do this, and it's okay, but I definitely enjoy just the back and forth banter, the conversation with a co-host. But anyways, that's besides the point. That was just me kind of reminiscing and kind of wearing my heart on my sleeve for a minute. But the thing that I think I want to talk about from that show, the show was your agency's tipping point, where is it? But we were really talking about the idea of technology and what it's going to do, one, to the insurance industry. But again, this really branched, and this went far beyond insurance, and really is going to affect just about every industry. And it's just, I think it was 8 or 9 emerging technologies that are going to be, kind of becoming full mainstream adopted within the next probably 10 to 15 years. Things like driverless cars, gamification. What else was there? There was 3D printing. There's a whole list. I mean, so basically what it did in the conversation, and this is what I like to do, and again, going back to the conversation that we had with Ben Fisher and seeing the future, it's, Are you able to start looking at the ripple effect? Can you see things coming? Can you look to something like that? And this is kind of I guess maybe creating the recipe to some extent? Are you going to finally give yourself the respect and time to start working on something that is not today, that is not tomorrow, but it is something that is ultimately much bigger than what anybody else is doing? Because if you are constantly only doing, what people are doing today, then chances are tomorrow is going to be a little bit harder to come by. And that's the kind of the whole thing that I've been kicking around my head, and some of the opportunities and some of the things that are going on here that I can't necessarily talk about right now. But it's just thinking bigger, thinking ahead, thinking to a point where you might be crazy, but you're not. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at a little bit and rant about. And if you're doing that, and if you're not, why? Because ultimately, somebody's going to come and change your industry, and it might be for the better or worse of your benefit. And if you're not in a position to do anything about it, well, you're going to be finding yourself learning a few new skills. And there's no industry like the insurance industry that is constantly under fire and speculation for such changing and ratification. I don't know if that's the right word, but it sounds good, so we'll go with it. And it's those technologies that will drive that change. So again, just even thinking of something as simple as driverless cars. I mean, what is it going to do? I mean, just think of the ripple effect there of how many different things it's going to ultimately change, how many industries it will affect, how many industries are dependent upon it. So, I mean, just in the show that we did, we talked about one, what are cities going to do that, constantly have traffic violations? And if you are, if you've ever had a DUI or know somebody that's had a DUI, that's not cheap. If you get a speeding ticket, that's not cheap. If you're in an accident, that's not cheap. So there's a whole revenue stream that will be gone just from that one change. And I don't know what it equates to the bottom line of a city, but I'm sure that they are not going to easily be able to replace that. Are they being prepared? Are they getting prepared to replace that? Also, with the whole parking, if a car can go and bring itself back and forth to wherever it needs to go, if you don't actually just need a car constantly sitting there, if they can just, be brought to you on demand, are you going to have a garage anymore? Are you even going to have a driveway? You might have a driveway because you don't want to walk all the way, I guess, to the end of the street maybe to have it pick you up. But those are the kind of crazy things that are going to happen. I mean, with 3D printing, I mean, it's going to completely disrupt retail. I mean, stores like Home Depot and Walmart, and I mean, when things are are able to be printed in like a timely fashion. I mean, a 3D printer takes forever now, from what I understand. But I mean, once like materials can be printed like on site, and you don't actually need to make something anymore. I mean, first of all, manufacturing like goes away. It doesn't even exist anymore, which is so. Those are just. I don't want to get too futuristic on you guys, but I mean, these are just some of the ideas that are going to radically change the way that we do things. And are we thinking far enough ahead? Are we just taking the time to look at the recipes that are coming down the road? And are we going to be somebody, or do we want to be somebody that creates one of those? Do we want to be that person? I don't know. I'm just asking the question to you. It's up to you to answer it. But it's something to think about. And it's just kind of been where my head has been at lately, in addition to this. And I just thought it would be a nice, fun way to tie it all together. But that's about all I have for you today. And those are just the questions that I want you to think about and ask yourself. One, are you able to, are you trying to do something beyond, the recipes that are given to you? If you can't, then I don't think you're going to get very far. If you're just willing or able or whatever to accept the step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and call it a day, well, I think it would probably be easy to say that it's nice to know you, and we won't be hearing much from you after the fact, because that's not going to get you very far. And then 2, from my little rant is, how serious are you taking things that are bigger than the daily grind, that are bigger than even the weekly grind or the monthly grind? Are you considering that? Are you able to think beyond? Do you want to think beyond, or do you want to leave that to somebody else? I'd be interested to know. Why don't you go ahead and reach out? Send me an email, joey@fearlesslyquestioning.com. Let me know if you're that person or if you're someone else, because I'd like to know. And if it is, what are you thinking about? What are some of your big ideas? What do you think is crazy? What's an idea that you had that you would say someone would say that you're crazy? Tell me your crazy idea. Let's do that. Tell me your crazy idea, and let's see how crazy you are. I think we're going to have some fun with it. But that's it. I'm going to get out of here. Of course, please, if you are at all enticed, enjoy whatever the show, feel free to head over to iTunes and or Stitcher and leave us a rating and or review. Leave a fearless question there. Do something there to let people know that this is a place that you like and is worthwhile and provides you, some helpful stuff. And actually, these questions are making a difference. So, but other than that, I will be back with Jay. That's going to be Thursday, November 20th at 2 p.m. I hope to see you there. I'm Joey Giangola. Take it easy, everyone.